Together, we've committed nearly 700 tanks and thousands of armored vehicles, 1,000 artillery systems, more than 2 million rounds of artillery ammunition, more than 50 advanced launch rocket systems, anti-ship and air defense systems, all to defend Ukraine, and that doesn't count the other $500 million we're announcing with you today and tomorrow. That's going to be coming your way. And that's just the United States in this piece. And just today, that announcement includes artillery ammunition for HIMARS and howitzers, more javelins, anti-armor systems, air surveillance radars to help protect Ukrainian people from aerial bombardments. Later this week, we will announce additional sanctions against elites and companies that are trying to evade sanctions and backfill Russia's war machine. And thanks to bipartisan support in Congress, this week we are delivering billions in direct budgetary support, which the government can put to use immediately and help provide for basic services of citizens. The cost that Ukraine has had to bear has been extraordinarily high, and the sacrifices have been far too great. They've been met, but they've been far too great. We mourn alongside the families of those who've been lost to the brutal and unjust war. We know that there'll be very difficult days and weeks and years ahead. But Russia's aim was to wipe Ukraine off the map. Putin's war of conquest is failing. Russia's military has lost half its territory it once occupied. Young, talented Russians are fleeing by the tens of thousands, not wanting to come back to Russia. Not just fleeing from the military, fleeing from Russia itself, because they see no future in their country. Russia's economy is now a backwater, isolated and struggling. Putin thought Ukraine was weak and the West was divided. As you know, Mr. President, I said to you in the beginning, he's counting on us not sticking together. He was counting on the inability to keep NATO united. He was counting on us not to be able to bring in others on the side of Ukraine. He thought he could outlast us. I don't think he's thinking that right now. God knows what he's thinking, but I don't think he's thinking that. But he's just been plain wrong. Plain wrong. And 1 year later, the evidence is right here in this room. We stand here together. Mr. President, I'm delighted to be able to repay your visit to our country. In Washington, not long ago, you told the Congress, quote, "We have no fear, nor should anyone in the world have it," end of quote. You and all Ukrainians, Mr. President, remind the world every single day what the meaning of the word courage is. From all sectors of your economy, all walks of all life. It's astounding. Astounding. Remind us that freedom is priceless. It's worth fighting for as long as it takes, and that's how long we're going to be with you, Mr. President, for as long as it takes.
We'll do it.
Thank you.
As long as it takes, President Biden's final words at that joint news conference with President Zelensky of Ukraine. That visit, almost a year to the day since Russia invaded Ukraine, hugely symbolic. Watching that news conference with me, our correspondent Robin Brandt. And Robin, take us through what you heard there from the two men.
Well, as long as it takes is an echo of the mantra, almost precisely the words we heard from Germany's leader Olaf Scholz and Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, in recent weeks. And that is probably the most important takeaway from this visit. President Biden not just addressing his Ukrainian counterpart there, but also addressing the people of Ukraine, addressing Vladimir Putin in Moscow, and the American people as well. Remember, domestic political support for this is crucial. And he was resolute. We stand by Ukraine for as long as it takes. Right, so President Biden spoke for a little longer there. He was second. Firstly, we heard from Volodymyr Zelensky in Ukrainian. He talked about how Joe Biden first came to Ukraine 15 years ago. He's been 7 times since, so not a stranger to that country. But the first time Joe Biden has been as president. Zelensky said that the negotiations between the two men have been very fruitful. He talked about how the visits over the years have helped to solidify resilience in terms of Ukraine's position, its standing, its confidence now. Interestingly as well, he talked about how the pledge of Abrams tanks by the United States, discussions we're hearing about possible help with long-term missiles, is a great boost to morale on the field for the Ukrainian troops. So it's not just about the hardware they're getting, it's about the message it sends, and it's about the confidence they can have.
And also President Zelensky talking about the defence of the international rules-based order. He's always repeated this, hasn't he? And everything he said, it's not just about defending Ukraine, it's about defending yourself as well.
No, for him, this isn't about a war between Russia and Ukraine. It's not even just about a war in continental Europe. And this echoes what we heard from Kamala Harris, the US Vice President, in recent days. Ukraine, some in the US and others elsewhere, see this as a threat to global stability, and Russia's aggressive acts, they believe, are a threat to the whole global order, certainly as those in Paris, London, Berlin and Washington see it. Let's just quickly recount what we heard from President Biden in his comments. He recounted the night of the invasion and how a kind of an exhortation came down the phone from President Zelensky to gather the leaders of the world. That has been
it was
his
very
role.
effective, wasn't it, when he recalled that night?
Yeah, and that has been his role. I mean, he's almost rallier in chief, and he went on to talk about his success, frankly, and others around him, of rallying the world around this cause of defending Ukraine and defending the values that they believe are under threat. He went on to talk about how almost a year on from the beginning of this invasion, Kyiv stands, democracy stands. He repeated the belief that the US administration now has that Russia has committed war crimes during this invasion. In terms of confidence in Ukraine's ability to, frankly, win the war, President Biden said he believes Ukraine is succeeding. And, quote, he is confident that they will prevail. And interestingly, towards the end, comments not directed precisely at Vladimir Putin, but a message very strongly to Vladimir Putin, is that Joe Biden believes that, that Vladimir Putin thought that he could outlast the world and the will of the West. And he went on to say, God knows what President Putin, is thinking now.